Did you know there is a country where billboards are banned, tobacco is illegal, and it has no red lights? A nation so green it absorbs more carbon than it emits, so remote that it's never been colonized, and so stubborn it delayed television and the internet on purpose. We are talking about the tiny country of Bhutan, a quiet country wedged between India and China, two of the loudest nations on earth. But while its neighbors chase growth, Bhutan is chasing something else, something we all do from time to time: happiness. To understand what happiness looks like up close, we spoke to two people from Thimphu. First, 30-year-old Dechen Wangdi, a writer, journalist and content creator, a modern Bhutanese balancing tradition with curiosity. He's the founder of a social project, People of Thimphu. We also spoke to 87-year-old Michael Rutland, a man who may look his age, but carries the spirit of a boy with a sweet tooth. Born in London in the middle of World War II, he had no idea life would one day take him across the world to a tiny Himalayan kingdom he would end up calling home. I'm Ananya Dutta, and this is Now You Know. Through the 18th and 19th centuries, South Asia was a battlefield of empire. The British colonized India, Tibet came under Chinese control, Nepal opened its doors to foreign influence. But Bhutan, it stayed untouched. Bhutan chose seclusion over submission. It had no railway lines, no airstrips, and barely any roads until the 1960s. It also had help from the nature. The Himalayas acted like a fortress, its monarchy a stabilizing force, and Buddhism its national glue. By the 1970s, the world was accelerating. Cold wars, capitalism, and coups. But Bhutan was living in an alternative world under a young king named Jigme Singye Wangchuk. He saw the outside turbulence and made a quiet, radical decision. Rather than racing to catch up, Bhutan redefined what growth meant.
During that part of that teaching, I was invited to come for a year to Bhutan to teach science and mathematics to the young chappie who would become the fourth king.
And that's where the philosophy of gross national happiness was born. At just 17, King Wangchuk challenged the world order that depended on gross domestic product, or GDP for short. He proposed that a country's growth shouldn't depend on the money in the back pocket, rather happiness in the heart.
As we grew up, we started to learn more about gross national happiness, and most of us, we started, defining it for ourselves. We realized that it is something, at a very individual level, gross national happiness means something different to all of us.
And I remember in England talking to people, it was rather mocked as being something all very well for a tiny little Himalayan kingdom, etc. But it wasn't really very important. And then we had the financial crash.
So Bhutan built a model around 4 pillars. For a better understanding, let's think of Bhutan as a person. The first pillar of the GNH index is socio-economic development. Think of this like a job, your everyday groceries, your savings account. It's not about chasing luxury cars or fancy vacations. It's about whether you can afford good food, clean water, and a decent home to go back to.
The most tangible reason people are happy in Bhutan is because we have clean air and clean water. And that may not come as a surprise to many but it is quite a privilege to have access to these things.
Second is conservation of the environment. You know how on a bad day, a long walk in nature can fix your mood? Bhutan gets that. That's why the country has made environmental protection a constitutional duty. More than 70% of its land is forested. It's not just about saving the planet. It's about saving your sanity. Bhutan's logic is, if nature heals you, protect it, like your mental health depends on it.
Bhutan, as you will know, has a vast amount of forests. It could have made a lot of money by chopping down all the forests. Look at what has happened in Nepal, where they've cut down all the forests mainly to serve tourism.
The third pillar is preservation of culture. Think of this as Bhutan asking, who am I? You know that feeling when you go back to your childhood home, or eat a dish your grandmother used to make, or hear a song that your father used to hum to you? That sense of belonging is that culture. Bhutan doesn't want to trade its identity for modernity.
As a child, you must have grown up, feeling that you shouldn't be proud of your culture and you should be rather more westernized and speak better English and act like a more person from Hollywood and things like that. But that shouldn't be true.
You know, you see an 18-year-old boy walking to school and he's holding hands with his 8-year-old sister taking her to school. In England, an 18-year-old would be ashamed of helping his little 8-year-old sister to school.
And finally, the fourth pillar. It's good governance, a concept alien to many of us. Bhutan knows that no matter how mindful or nature-loving you are, if the system doesn't work, then what's the point at all? Good governance is like the therapist who actually listens and lets you do the talking.
The leadership of Bhutan could be a role model for some of our world leaders. Just calm down. Let's see how we can work things out.
Most foreigners only know Bhutan through postcards because tourists aren't exactly welcome there. International visitors must pay $100 every single day. That's close to 8,500 rupees a day. Bhutan calls it high value, low volume. This way of tourism is a polite way of saying, we'll host you, but we don't need you.
I think we have a pretty good reason to, not open up the country to like full-scale mass tourism, and that's for the good because first of all, the country doesn't have the infrastructure to support mass tourism. I've seen how sometimes tourism can be also bad. They can be, they can take a toll on the culture and heritage.
There are no McDonald's, Starbucks, or KFCs in Bhutan. Not because of explicit bans by the government, but because it just doesn't make sense. The market is too small. The total population is 770,000 people. So even if every Bhutanese drank a latte every single day, the numbers wouldn't work for big corporations. So there are local restaurants serving butter tea and momo. You might lose your Wi-Fi signal, but you will find people's connection.
Maybe our understanding of places, cities like New York is because of the movie Kalho Naho, because it made sure that, all of us, we wanted to go and visit this place, right? One thing that really stuck with me was seeing homeless people, and at a scale and at a systemic level that was not understandable to me.
If this slow life is making you want to move to Bhutan, good luck with that. Because only Bhutanese citizens can own land, and citizenship isn't something you apply for. It's something you're granted by the king personally.
I retired 25 years ago, and I came on my usual holiday, and I'm still on holiday. So 25 years. And very kindly, I was given citizenship of Bhutan, which is a very, very high privilege given to very few people.
But here's a question. Are there no repercussions when a country refuses to change with time? There is. You give birth to a generation that questions your concept of living. Bhutan has witnessed an unprecedented wave of youth migration, with thousands of students leaving the country in search of better educational and economic opportunities abroad. With the youth unemployment rate exceeding 28%, Australia has emerged as the new home for Bhutanese students.
We are suffering at the moment from a wave of emigration to countries like Australia. And I believe that countries like Australia are behaving immorally in that they will take nurses, doctors, teachers from Bhutan who have been educated and trained at the expense of the people of Bhutan.
In 2017, only a few hundred Bhutanese students applied for Australian visas. In 2023, more than 12,000 Bhutanese students relocated. This is equivalent to 1.5% of Bhutan's total population. There is a growing fear that the country will have a big population imbalance, with more old people than young ones, similar to Japan and South Korea.
If I could point out, in Bhutan, we've had 4 elected governments since democracy, and we've had 6 ministers of education. Each one stops what the previous one was doing and brings in their own new ideas, but they don't last. So I believe one big change Bhutan should make is to take education out of politics. And I hope my friend, the Minister of Education, is not listening.
There is another thing. For a country that was the last on earth to introduce television, Bhutan has crawled a long way. Instagram reels now flow through valleys once cut off by cliffs. TikTok is everywhere, from teenage monks lip-syncing in maroon robes to farmers dancing between rice paddies. And like everywhere else, the scroll culture is changing how people think, how they feel, and how they live. Bhutan didn't grow up with the internet, it leapt into it. Social media is regularly used by 60% of the total population. It has cracked open a tightly held society. The good thing here is that the access has prompted young Bhutanese influencers to use Instagram to talk about climate change, mental health, LGBTQ+ rights, and even critique the government policies.
And I've seen that how, social media is not just growing in Bhutan, but it's almost like become a way of life for people. I know people who spend hours and hours on social media. A lot of young people who are on social media, they might be, entirely basing their happiness or their well-being based on how maybe, they're doing well on social media, how many followers they have, how many likes they get, and all that.
Bhutan is not perfect. It never claimed to be. But it is sincere in a world that often isn't. It reminds us that growth doesn't have to be loud, that progress isn't always have to be about money, that maybe, just maybe, success can be measured in silence, clean air, and a sense of belonging. And in a time where we wear burnout as a badge of honor, Bhutan stands out asking a question we've all asked ourselves. Am I happy? If you didn't know before, now you know.